So when Trudeau went to Mar-a-Lago and tried to kiss and make up and try and find a middle ground, you think that was a disaster? That didn't really go the way he planned.
Yeah, I don't think it would plan because I think I don't think Trudeau's capable of like introspection, and because like again like I think there's some effort on the Canadians because people are starting to get arrested now for drug dealing, and you're seeing some drug busts now in Canada. It's all open, like if they didn't have millions of dollars in fancy lawyers, I could just say like, okay, this guy's here, he's there, this guy, it's there. So you now see the RCMP cracking down on it, looking for more, trying to prove they're a drug bust. So I do think there was some fire lit under the Canadian establishment that like, okay, we actually have to do something about crime and drugs. And it's the same sort of mentality with the British grooming gangs where everyone knows, but they're paralyzed by being called, fears of being called racist or whatever, because the criminals know that, all we have to do is scream racism or something.
Do you think
woke.
the same thing's happening with the Khalistani gangs as well? That no one wants to act on them because you're afraid of being called racist?
Yeah, and they've learned it. I mean, the Khalistanis have learned to co-opt the language of the international left. They work very closely with like the Muslim Brotherhood, who figured this out years ago, and they're involved in all this different stuff. So it's a lot of things. It's people don't really know what the Khalistanis are until very recently. They saw like the sword-wielding lunatics running around the country. But yeah, they've learned to do that. And if you see the Khalistani narrative in the West, Indians would be a little unfamiliar with it than what the Khalistani narrative would be here in India, because the Khalistani narrative in the West has like morphed into this sort of leftist critical theory thing, where it's like oppressor oppressed, Hindus are white, Sikhs are brown, like this type of mentality, right? So it's very much sort of morphed to fit, right? The Khalistanis figured out to sell their narrative so it passes by, someone at Carleton University or U of T or UBC goes, they're oppressed by the oppressors who are this, and Hindutva, scary word, right? So they've the way the narrative goes, it's very much catered for a Western audience.
But now with Trudeau gone, you see that changing, or it's whoever is at the helm.
So Trudeau will go and it will get better, right? That's at the top, right? I'm not saying there are no Khalistanis in the Conservative Party, but there are significantly less. The Conservatives will have a supermajority, and the Khalistanis don't have any balance of power in the new government. This current government, especially because it's a coalition with Jagmeet Singh, who's a Khalistani, and again, leaders have a lot of control. So you have the Liberal Party that was infiltrated. You could list Assange and Ramasanga and like just how infiltrated they are. And you had a deeply infiltrated Liberal Party with a NDP party who's run by a Khalistani, and in order to maintain power,
they have to pander to the mob.
They have to pander to the mob because the Khalistanis can break this government if they want. At any time, the Khalistanis could bring this government down.
But who's the deputy leader of the Conservative side is also
there's
like
there's two deputy leaders.
Okay,
you have Tim Uppal, who's at the same parades as all the different people, and then you have Melissa Lantsman, who's.
So why do you say it'll change when the Conservatives come?
Because they won't hold a balance of power, and there's right. So it will get better because even if it's 5-6 Khalistanis in the Conservative government,
they can't bring the government down.
Right, they'll have a super majority, so they can't bring the government down, and the Conservative base doesn't like this stuff, right? So it has to stay very under the radar. You can grab a sword and like burn down a church in the Liberal Party, and the Liberal base will go, oh, that's an interesting social justice platform. And churches are burning across our country, and Justin Trudeau literally said, oh, this is understandable, right? So that really kicked off the attacks on synagogues and Hindu temples, started with the burning of the churches, and the Prime Minister going, understandable behavior.
You're saying with Poilievre, it'll be different.
It'll be different.
He's going to respond differently if such a thing were to happen.
I mean, he might be apathetic, but like there's only a level you can go to in the Conservative Party, right? Listen, I don't know Poilievre's mind, and he's not a hardcore counterterrorism guy. He's more your economic libertarian, cut the taxes and the woke nonsense. There's
tell us a little bit more about this guy. He's going to be
prime minister. He's going to be prime minister.
Next, yeah. So we need to know about him.
So we're covering him. He's very different from traditional politicians. He's not a Stephen Harper type. Stephen Harper like, you know, he created the modern Conservative Party. Like, he brought the Reform and the Progressive Conservatives together, and he kind of ran that party as like his own thing. And he was, you know, good economically, more like, you know, socially, traditionally conservative. Whereas Pierre, I think, represents his more a bit younger libertarian side to him.
They call him Canada's Trump. Is that a fair?
No,
he's not.
No, he's not like Trump. And I would cover the campaign. He's like, this is the whole misconception around populism. Pierre Poilievre is not a populist. He's just very popular. If you go to a Pierre Poilievre rally, and I've covered them, Pierre Poilievre will do like 10 minutes in depth on like, here's a problem with housing. Here's how it works. Here's how I'm going to fix it. Here's an actual 4-point plan. And he can keep young people and old people engaged while talking about monetary policy that means something to them. That's a skill, right?
So how I want to circle back. You said he's popular but not populist.
Yeah.
But in this day and age, in the politics that we're seeing, you know, world over, that's a rarity.
That is really, but like, it's who defines what populist is, right? You know, populist is just a scare word generally used for a politician you don't like to use a scary word. And then, you know, some people on the right will adopt it as like, yeah, we need a populist leader, which means you just want someone yelling at your enemies. And is it populist generally means like we want hard rhetoric. It's more important than policy to me. But
so what does he stand for, Poilievre? What is his? I mean, I've heard of axe the tax and stuff, but that's like the big signature.
Yeah, so it's sort of your like economic libertarianism. It's your smaller government, you know, actual like pride in Canada. Canada's something, you know. So Poilievre's version of conservatism, again, like his wife is from Venezuela, like a Venezuelan dissident. So he's very anti-communist. The Conservative Party is pretty good on like Islamic Republic of Iran and counterterrorism and all that.
So you think the relationship between Ottawa and Delhi will improve under Pierre?
Yeah, because Pierre is a businessman. I mean, you'll have listen. Once resources get to market, this is not the hardest thing to figure out. Okay, Canada has tons of resources. The Liberals shut it down. A lot of our problems come from the Liberals shutting that down. Canada has tons of resources. India needs resources because it has tons of people, right? It doesn't take a genius to figure this one out. It takes a lunatic to break this thing, and we had one for 10 years. So, I see. I mean, Poilievre will. It's hard to be more hostile than the current government is towards India. And again, it's Jagmeet Singh having the balance of power. Also, they need to cover up for the Chinese foreign interference. They needed a punch.
So you think that's why Trudeau floated this whole bogey about Indian agents being involved in the Niger killing, because he wanted to take away attention from the Chinese interference?
Yes, because Chinese, like in the right before September 2023, like that's when all this, like, we're infiltrated by China, Han Dong, like money, and Trudeau's always been deeply in bed with the CCP, his father too. So as this really big Chinese interference, and everyone's talking about foreign policy, foreign interference, it was a big thing. And the narrative was Trudeau's lackadaisical, they're covering up foreign interference and all this. So if you accuse India of foreign interference and then you go, 120% on India, you get to then turn to the media and say, I'm so hard on foreign interference. Look, I've kicked out a diplomat. I've done all this. And so, I mean, I think there's a couple of things I said that right at the outset that seemed to be true. Is like, one, I said, this is a story of Pakistani foreign interference. Guys, is Indian foreign interference to distract from Chinese foreign interference.
Okay.
And I think that's borne out. And when they started to say, when I started the reports of like, Indian foreign interference in Canada is a high type thing, I go like, it was like Iran, China, and India. And I go, what, India? Foreign interfering in Canada?
So this is happening in the realm of politics. Obviously, there are the TV interviews, there are the podcasts, people are talking about it on Twitter, etc. But what about the people? Are people really talking about it? Are ordinary Canadians talking about just how bad the relationship has become between India and Canada?
Yeah, I mean, at the outset, like, Canadians like our image as like the good guy, right? Like Canadians love the fact that Americans, when they backpack around Europe, put Canadian flags on their backpack because everyone likes Canadians more. So the fact that an American would be more comfortable with an American flag on their backpack than a Canadian flag going through India, that's like a type deal. And there's the hardcore TrueAnon base that's like in the media, and that crazy 15% that still supports Trudeau. India, Modi's coming for us. Modi's where is he? Is that Modi? Take it. take your mask off. That's sort of where they're at. But the average Canadian, they're so fed up with you could say the wokeness. Like, the vast majority of Canadians now support, quote, mass deportations.
Really?
Yes. Because Trudeau just let in everyone, the student visa. I mean, the people who killed Niger, like, are they gangsters? Are they Indian agent hitmen? Blah, blah, blah. They're on student visas. Like, what are they studying? Like, what's this? And everyone knows it's a crock. So, it's more like with a lot of the average Canadians just, like, fed up with all, like, the nonsense that's being imposed in, whether it be Khalistanis, the Palestine stuff, they don't want any more lunatics who got their 5 minutes ago running around the streets demanding whatever it is. Mm-hmm. They're done with this, right? Everyone's feeling the burn, right? Once the upper middle class starts to feel it, then that's when it can't be hidden anymore.
So immigration is one part of it, and it's visible, I guess. I mean, you can see that in the demographics changing. You can see that in your neighborhoods changing. What about like everyday expenses? I think that's the other thing that's really gone through the roof.
Yeah, people are feeling the wall again. Like, everyone's seeing inflation, and like it's out of control. And then, like, this. I mean, I'm sure the CBC and like Stuart Bell will be fact checking this and say, actually, inflation is going down in Canada. Well, that's because we use the CPI, and the CPI is designed to not measure inflation because it doesn't account for substitutions. Yeah. So people see prices go up and up and up and up, and then the CBC says, actually, inflation's going down, but prices going up and up and up and up. Because if the CPI is calculated, it doesn't have substitutions. It's how much do you spend at the grocery store. Yeah. So if, like, you're buying, I won't use you're buying high quality lamb, right, as like $100 worth of lamb for protein per week, right? But the price of lamb goes from 100 to 120. So you go, I can't afford that because the max I can spend is 105, and you spend 105 on chicken. Inflation is at 5%. Yeah. Well, but the prices are increasing 20%, right? And then as prices go up and up and up, and Canadians start to then make sacrifices and like eat less or skip meals, well, now they're spending less at the grocery store. Inflation's gone down. Well, no, prices are going crazy up just the way we calculate them.